Fortunately, the reactions from the Red Cross firefighters was really fast. We hope the people taken to hospital will be able to recover. Some of them told us they were from Honduras, of all ages. We're working to remove and count the dead.
For more on this, let's speak to Javier Farje. He's a Latin American analyst and journalist and joins us live from London. So Javier, we know that this happened on the border inside of Mexico. So based on what we know of that system, how do you think this will be handled in terms of going after the people behind this, the smugglers?
That is the big problem because the government of Mr. López Obrador, President López Obrador, sent the army to block the border between Guatemala and Mexico, which is where they come from, which means that these smugglers have been using more dangerous and more clandestine routes to transport the people who want to immigrate to the United States, which means it's very difficult to spot because the army is controlling only the well-known crossing points between Guatemala and Mexico. We have to understand that most of the immigrants there were from Guatemala and some from Honduras. So it's very difficult to control him because these immigrants are desperate to reach the United States. Now, the president has trying to implement something called Quédate en México, stay in Mexico. This is a program he has implemented to try to convince those immigrants to, instead of trying to go to the US, they stay in Mexico, where they will be looked after. And that is supposed to help neutralize the power of these smugglers, but so far it has not worked. In fact, half an hour ago, Mr. López Obrador appeared before the media for his usual morning press conference with a big banner saying, stay in Mexico, which means that trying to encourage people to stay in the country. And he says that at least 300,000, he said himself half an hour ago, 300,000 immigrants are waiting to go to the United States. So they're trying to combine repression, that means the army blocking the border between Guatemala and Mexico, as well as in trying to encourage these immigrants to stay in Mexico. However, he said himself that because there are so many immigrants, more than 300,000 want to cross, it's difficult for this program to succeed on its own, that they have to deal the problems that happen in the country where they come from, which is extreme violence, as you reported and rightly said in the introduction of this piece.
Yeah, whenever you have desperation, of course, smuggling is going to be a very lucrative business and people will find ways to attempt it. Does the government ever bust up these smuggling rings? Because whenever the leadership in Mexico meets with the leadership in the United States, they talk a big game about targeting the smugglers. But is it ever successful? Can you think of any big cases where they have broken up these cartels of smugglers?
They tend to detain the immigrants, but they never catch the smugglers. And that is a big problem. Only last month, more than 220,000 immigrants were detained. But they always managed to escape these smugglers. For example, the driver, the conductor of the lorry which caused the accident managed to flee the scene. So it's been a problem. It's a big problem for the government to try to spot them. At the same time, there's a great deal of corruption among certain authorities, which means that smugglers have the authorities who help them because they take bribes in order to allow these lorries to go through Mexico to the Mexican territory. So it makes it very difficult for as long as there is corruption and there are police officers and authorities ready to take bribes from these smugglers. It's going to make it very difficult for the government to be able to stop this traffic. But at the same time, one of the ironies is that a great deal of the violence that happens in Guatemala, from which these people are escaping, are caused by the drug cartels that come from Mexico, which means that they would have to start by stopping the violence from the drug cartels, the Mexican drug cartels that have invaded parts of Guatemala, part of Honduras, to prevent these immigrants from trying to escape this violence. Because as you said in the introduction, rightly so, they try to escape violence, and violence is extreme, and these cartels have a great deal of control over certain cities in the border between Guatemala and Mexico. Yeah. So the situation is difficult, very difficult to control these smugglers because there is corruption as well.
Yeah, you raised so many good points and how interconnected all of these rings of criminality are. But this case with so much death, it reminds me of that case back in 2015 where 70 migrants were found in the back of a refrigerated truck, not in this part of the world, but in Austria. And I think that really brings to light not only the terrible conditions that these people are trying to escape from, but also the horror that they face in trying to make these journeys.
It's a world problem, as you said rightly. So it's a world problem, and it's especially now in Central America, because we are talking about these immigrants desperate to leave the country. Now, the conditions in which these people travel are absolutely appalling. Absolutely, these were containers usually used for food. There was no ventilation, so many of them die sometimes as a result of not having enough ventilation, for example. This accident has done is to highlight once again the situation. Now, for as long as there are problems of violence in Guatemala and Honduras, you're going to have this situation of immigration. For as long as these drug cartels who cause this violence in Guatemala and Honduras have a market in the US, the very country that wants to stop this immigration, you're going to continue having this situation. Everything is linked. And unless they attack the roots of the problem, you're going to have more tragedies like this one, unfortunately, and nobody's going to be able to stop them.
Absolutely. Javier, so good to talk to you.